Welcome, everyone, to Diversifying Funding and Strengthening Your Research Portfolio. My name is Gina Stouffer. I am the Assistant Director of Research Development at the Medical School Office of Research in the Grant Services and Analysis Office. Thank you for joining us today for this virtual seminar. We presented by Grant Services and Analysis, and then in partnership with the Taubman Health Sciences Library, the Michigan Medicine Corporate and Foundation Relations Office, and Fast Forward Medical Information.
Thank you, Gina, for inviting me today to talk about industry sponsorship. Very quickly, I know that the landscape is changing, so I'm getting lots of requests to talk about alternative funding opportunities. And in particular, my specialization is within working with industry and getting support for your research from industry sponsors. Very quickly, I am part of the Fast Forward Medical Innovations program within the Office of Research. Our program supports our med school research faculty members, and particularly in business development, we're looking for the best productive interactions between industry and our research faculty that are win-win. The team of individuals that help make up the business development team are Amelia Matrikeska and Ingrid Kemo. We are a team that's about to hire in, hopefully, a new associate director who recently left for the Department of Ophthalmology. But our team focuses on different disease areas across the organization. We want to go deep in those areas to understand where the opportunities are lying, both from our research faculty and the strength position that we have as academic researchers, but also then the connection with industry and what the market forces are. We also have specialization around certain deal types. So, for instance, clinical trials or data transfer agreements. So you'll work with us in different capacities, both from a disease expertise perspective, but also potential deal types. So what is and why do we have business development? So research is a competitive sport, right? Getting funding is always a challenge. Over the years, the program has focused on working with industry because federal funding has always been a competitive and decreasing amount of funds being awarded. So the idea of being able to diversify your research funding to other sources helps with the inevitable ebbs and flows of funding and uncertainty so that we have a more sustainable and secure future. The business development team, in terms of working with industry, the value proposition that we like to share with both companies and with academics is that this is always a challenge working together, right? You're talking about very different cultures in which you have to be working together. Challenges such as even this is a huge organization. Companies are looking around. Where do they find you? If they haven't worked with you in the past, where do they get the information to connect with you? Our team is helping match make those opportunities and then flip it around too. You research faculty members want to work with certain companies. Who do I even talk to? I know Pfizer has X drug, but who do I talk to at Pfizer, right? They're a huge organization. So again, we can match make in that situation. Same thing with once you've aligned or you've come up and identified, okay, yep, I want to work with Pfizer. Cancer's bad. How do you fix this and how do you come up with the solution? So we help facilitate discussions, create alignments. So then that way, the problem that's mutually identified, there's an approach in which we can all agree on that we're going to execute going forward. A lot of times we're getting the problem of inexperience. In other words, both for the company who doesn't work with academia all the time or our academic research faculty. So we want to provide guidance, education, set expectations, and really, as much as possible, we want to decrease the learning curve. So in that way, we can get to the fun part, which is working together and changing the world. The last thing I always say too, as well, is the speed of business, right? These are not grant deadlines, right? November 26th is not a special day to Pfizer necessarily. They may want it 2 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that, or before that. Everything is speed of business to them. And that a lot of times is a challenge that our organization isn't always geared up for. And what we want to try and do is help create competitive working timelines. We can talk more about that later. But one of the things I like to say is when a company reaches out to you and you don't get back to them for 2 weeks, and your first comment is, I'm sorry, I had a grant deadline due. that's not a competitive working timeline. Even to acknowledge and just say, "Hey, I'm busy at the moment, but I'll get back to you here shortly." That's a better way of doing that. You're being engaged in everything too as well. So that's kind of important. From a team perspective, what I like to look for is the right fit. And that's what I would say to all of my business team members, as well as to our research faculty group, is that we want an alignment around the science, the finances, the intellectual property terms, the contract and legal language. We want it to move the needle of research, right? We want you to be engaged and excited about doing this work together. If you look at it as only a paycheck, it's probably not going to go great, right? That's just kind of how our philosophical approach is going to be. We want to make sure that there's an operational philosophical alignment, because the other side of that too is if company X is giving you $20 million to do your research, but you hate working with them, or they're very difficult and challenging. We've had this problem. It is a very difficult, painful situation to be in. Sometimes the very best deal is just not do the deal at all. Live to go for another opportunity another day. Okay. So that's part of our team's fit in terms of philosophy here as a win-win. Look, our faculty at U of M are our main customer. That's how we look at this. We're a service organization. We want to leverage the deep knowledge and the connections we have across the entire university. So everything from consideration for intellectual property, like with innovation partnerships, to indemnification language that we'd work with ORSP on. Those are the kinds of things that we want to help accelerate and make sure that we can get through once we get to and arrive at a mutually agreeable project together with industry. In addition to that, we look at the external customer of this organization as industry partners. I believe that the best predictor of any type of working relationship with industry is an opportunity in which there's history of working together, right? That's the way I see this. This is based on relationships. If you have a partner that you know, growing up and everything and getting your, professional certifications, work with in the lab, let's say, they now work at Lilly, they reach out to you and they want to work with you again. It's not just Lilly, it's the individual that you've worked with in the past. That's a good predictor of the potential opportunity to work together again. Lilly, University of Michigan, your lab, and that individual at Lilly. So let's flip it around, because any relationship, it's two ways, right? I know our academic research faculty members are looking for sponsorship opportunities. And I heard the question that was posed to Katie around how can I reprocess a grant for, say, a foundation? Same thing for industry then. And I think this slide is germane then to that question, which is the question around what's the value proposition of industry working with you, the academic researcher? And the value proposition for industry can be in a calculation of the product that they're getting is what they want, and it's going to be time and costs that they're considering against that product. So as a mathematical calculation, product minus time plus money. If something is incredibly valuable to them, the results that you're going to give them is incredibly valuable, they may be willing to spend more than $1 million on your work. They may spend $2 million on that work. That's important to them. So that's their calculation. It's not driven solely by scientific advancement. It's a nice to have, not a must have. So when you look at the value proposition that I add on top of that, what does good look like? I said that the future security of working with a company and the prediction of relationship, what does good look like? This is an important thing to think about too, which is when they're reaching out and you're working on project initiation, aligning on your goals of what the project's going to be, being willing to be focused on talking with them, being that customer focused approach, timely in your responses, willing to negotiate. Those are things that are really important. In addition to that, meeting and exceeding expectations. I can't emphasize that enough, where if you set up where in 6 months I'm going to get you these scientific results and it takes you 9 months, that's not meeting expectations. If you get it in 4 months, you're exceeding expectations, right? So being realistic up front even is important to set expectations and meet those opportunities. And then the last thing, of course, and I think most people are doing this very well, which is good, clean data. There's no drama necessarily. If there's audits being done, it's verifiable and everything. If you're doing these three things incredibly well, it's going to create a virtuous circle, is what I like to call it. This is the opportunity where there's the knock-on effect where people want to come back and work with you. This is similar to human nature. Think about when you work with individuals, you're assigned a difficult task, you reach out and say it's competitive timelines, You reach out to the people you've worked with in the past, your social circle, to tap into to work with you to achieve those goals. This is no different in that situation. So, all sins, if you were to say for just a second, can be forgiven if your performance meets and exceeds expectation. Because in the prior slide, as I said, the product that's being delivered is the number one thing they need. Okay. So quickly, our team at Fast Forward helps support all industry engagement that align with the tripartite mission of the University of Michigan. The tripartite mission is research, education, service, and healthcare. So for us, I'm going to focus on research today, but we also support educational partnership with industry through sponsorship, and then same thing even with learning, non-U of M learners, are sharing our know-how with companies and those representatives as well too. So I'll highlight a couple of specific examples of partnership types that we work with industry on. One of the first ones is consulting. These aren't big dollars necessarily, but incredibly impactful in terms of the future opportunities working with industry on sponsored research. You are the expert. They want to talk to you. Many times they have products already to go. They need your know-how and how to apply it. You can do consulting. This is absolutely something you can do in the organization, either through the ORSP and the university or outside as a non-employee between you and that company. We can help facilitate that too as well, set up what what parameters would look like in terms of a consulting agreement and kind of weigh the pros and cons of executing inside or outside of the organization. Can't emphasize consulting enough. Next one is classic sponsored research, where you're defining what the scope of work is going to be. You then set up then from there the budgetary considerations for that scope of work that are right size, and we negotiate from there, and then we route it through the system, contract execute, and get sponsored research activities going. Another type of work is other sponsored activities, and in particular, fee for service. These are less academic in the fact that we're not considering publication rights or intellectual property terms in our agreements, but rather you have expertise, you have excess capacity in which you do something that the company in a transactional manner can get from you as a deliverable. So in other words, run this set of experiments, give me the results, I'll give you 50K for it. That's essentially kind of how these set up. It's a little different. I have a video that I'd like to share with an investigator that's made a very good diverse portfolio of funding through fee-for-service activities.
My name is Randy Seeley. I'm a professor in the Department of Surgery and the director of the Michigan Nutrition Obesity Research Center. And we have often used fee-for-service contracts with companies to do a couple of things. One, it helps you diversify your economy. The second thing is building relationships with these companies helps you build deeper collaborative projects for later on.
Thanks, Randy. So he's a very good example of over the last several years where he's doing sponsored research, consulting, and fee-for-service activity, all those different touch points, building a national reputation in which there is a myriad of opportunities, not just with one single company. People talk, people move from company to company. That's how some of the researchers, if you're looking at your colleagues that are successful in this area, how is it that they're working with Pfizer and with J&J, let's say? It's sometimes just as an opportunity where reputationally they're nationally known now, and the individuals that were at one company have moved to the next one and they still want to work with you. That goes back to the relationship side for a second. Last that I want to highlight is clinical trials. It's one that we hear a lot of too as well. We do a large and robust book of business in clinical trials. There is two types that I like to break it into as buckets. One is here's a protocol from the company and their asset. Run this for me, generate the evidence, give it back to me. That's a classic clinical trial, sponsor initiated. There's also investigator initiated trials in which you, the expert, have come up with a protocol design based on the asset, say a drug or a device of that company, and you're asking for them to sponsor that. A lot of times we can help support those IITs in particular where we have connections with those companies to the right business units, and we can help negotiate and find what the best opportunity in terms of support could be for the company. Obviously, we want sponsored dollars to help support the design trial that you have in place, but maybe sometimes the best opportunity is not funding because the company doesn't have that, but it's no cost drug and placebo, let's say, which then gets you halfway there potentially as well. So those are some of the opportunities. We have a broad catalog of company contacts that we can get a hold of, and we both can identify if you have IITs or if there's opportunities in which companies want to work with us. We're out all the time in the field trying to engage with those folks to bring them here and work with you. I have a quick video from Najira Lagogo, who's a very successful clinical trialist in pulmonary medicine.
I'm Dr. Njira Lagogo, and I'm a professor of medicine in the Division of Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine. I've spent the better part of 2 decades doing clinical trials sponsored by pharma, and my area of expertise is asthma. Partnering with pharma has been very impactful in my career. I've been able to work closely with companies to help inform clinical trial design, address gaps in care, and also find novel therapies for patients with severe asthma, now pushing into milder asthma. And I've been able to also participate in a number of scholarly activities, education, and publications that have had a really high impact in the field.
Great, excellent. So Najira, again, is another very good example of clinical trials was a big starting point for her in terms of performance exceeding expectations in terms of enrollment and goals. She now has a robust, different types of deals with companies, with multiple companies across the asthma space, in which there's education opportunities, there's public speaking and consulting opportunities that have grown her portfolio of research and sponsorship with industry. So to give a very high level project pipeline and kind of how we work with industry and our academic research faculty at the University of Michigan, opportunities are coming in, kind of that left side of the pipeline, if you will, where we can help right up front set up what the aligned expectations are. And then from there, we can, in working together, write out as a statement of work what the deliverables are going to be. I'm going to do this, you're going to do that, right? Those eventually become the future exhibit A's within the contract, right? Outlining the work. From there, you can then budget based on the statement of work what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, which are the biggest cost drivers in budgeting. You can set up milestones in which how we get paid or how we would deliver certain activities to the sponsor. And then obviously through this time, we're working with different team members within the organization, RAs, Innovation Partnerships, ORSP, the grants office, to make sure that these are lining up. We go through regulatory review and legal review on to contract execution so that you can execute on the project. Those are the things that we try and set up all across this entire pipeline. At any point in time, we're happy to get involved from a business development perspective. Even if we're about to sign, there's a question, happy to answer it as well too. The goal too is we want to learn from these projects, so we actually follow up afterwards too to make sure what we're setting up is good for both the organization at U of M, but also with companies too as well, because it goes back to a win-win partnership. Both parties need to be happy with the output afterwards. I'm going to pivot a little bit to talking about how you find industry partners. If you have no experience, right, this is brand new to you, what are some of the ways that you can get started working with companies? So right away, I like to say this is that I can bring in opportunities and bring in my Pfizer friend or whatever, but they're not here to talk to business development and to the administrative team. They need to talk to you. That's what's going to keep them here. They want to work with you. So don't underestimate the value of your participation in being engaged and putting yourself out there. The opportunities come in the form of conferences and meetings. If you're presenting at a professional conference, there's a great chance there's industry contacts in that presentation audience. They may even come up to you afterwards and ask, hey, can I talk to you more? I'm really interested in your science. Being able to know what to do next, right, are some of the things that we can practice together if that's something that you're interested in or you see an opportunity at. Same thing in terms of just the random inquiries. A lot of people are scouting out and looking for opportunities to work with experts. So they're scouting PubMed or other professional journals, and they're going to reach out to you. I can't emphasize enough. I hear this a lot from companies where they'll cold email somebody, no response. Yeah, I've been trying to get a hold of Dr. So-and-so, and she never got back to me. And that's when we'll try and help make that connection. There's always networking opportunities through social gathering, professional opportunities. So being ready, sometimes we even practice a little bit like your pitch, if you will. The goal is that from that initial encounter, you can then say, look, I want to talk more about it with you. Let's bring in another follow-up meeting. And from there, you can either engage with our team or just get your thoughts around what the opportunity might look like with the right people in the conversation from the company side and decision makers. If you're soliciting industry partners, I like to give you some advice. It's similar to the question that I heard that was asked of Kate, which is if you're asking for, say, a sponsored research on a grant that you put in place that didn't go through for federal funding, and now you want to make it at Bristol Myers Squibb, let's say. You want $1 million to do this research project, going to take a couple years. Flip it back on yourself for a second and say, all right, I'm Bristol Meyer. I'm being pitched this. Think of what they're going to ask for. What is it that's so unique at this with this investigator that it's worth my time and energy to get something out of it that's worth $1 million? If you can kind of answer that question, we're on the right track. I'll also say too as well, they again might even say, look, it's worth more than $1 million. If you can get it done in half the time, I'll give you $2 million to do the work. This is what they're thinking about. And that's what I would say. I'm noticing the faculty that have gotten experience, they can start to do this exercise and be able to understand what they're bringing to the table is valuable to the company and they can say it. So that's incredibly different than I think federal funding's approach, which is more of the let's expand on the science and I'm interested in this. It's give me something that comes out of this that's meaningful to me, my goals, product development. It doesn't always have to be a drug necessarily. It could be that they're moving the science forward, for instance, from a preclinical to a submission to the FDA. You know what those milestones potentially might be to make it clinically applicable. Those are the types of things that you pitch that to them and explain that to them. They may get very excited about your approach and then want to fund you. Another way that you can be found is through our Collaborate Hub. So what we have on our website is a search engine. We have our faculty that want to work with industry, fill out specific information. It's not PubMed or the grants like that you get from federal funding that we have on Michigan Experts. Those are lagging indicators. These are very specific, prospective. This is what I'm working on. These are the unique assets that I can do in my lab. This is a way for companies, which we do a lot of marketing and they read through these and they can find you. If they're looking for an expert or a unique patient population and you're in here, they'll be able to find you and connect with you right away too as well. So we get a lot of foot traffic through this Collaborate Hub. I can send afterwards the survey to help fill that out. We give non-confidential information. We do vet that beforehand too as well. The other thing is just arming yourself. This is not something that you just, all right, I'm going to do this now and I'm going to work with industry if you've never done it before. It takes time, cultivation, and just for many timing, right? This may be a great opportunity. Company X wants to work with you, loves the idea, but their R&D spend for this year is already dedicated to something completely different. So being ready, being able to recognize that there's other ways besides just classic sponsored research. Maybe it's through data transfers and material transfers that you have in which they can maybe at discount run diagnostic tests for you, get the results back, and then you build out from there potentially a sponsored research opportunity. These are some of the self-help learning tools on our website that can kind of give you some of those vignettes. And then please reach out to the team too as well, because every time is slightly different. There's not a prescriptive way of always working with industry. That's kind of what I found. There's kind of that loose opportunity. So the last thing I'll say, and then open up for questions, is that, we want to help strengthen the portfolio through the diversification of new funding streams through industry. That's our specialization. There are certainly opportunities in which we can capitalize on that. I will say, although I didn't say it in my talk, is that everybody's starting to think like this too, right? All of your academic university peer researchers recognize the uncertainty of federal funding and they're changing gears. So now more than ever, over the next few years, I think it's going to become very competitive, hyper competitive working with industry because the dollars that I've seen over the last 20 years, 15 years is flat. Industry is not going to make up the difference. They're going to keep doing their product development. They're going to keep the R&D spend probably similar to what it's been in the past. So that means the competition is not with companies, but rather with your peers and other academic universities. So being able to talk the talk that they're familiar with gives you that competitive edge that's going to be required to be successful. And you've got a lot of team members across the organization that can help you frame this out too as well. But my emphasis would be thinking about it as a win-win. What is it that they're getting out of working with you, which you're the best person on earth to tell them that, by the way. And then from there, you can align around clear expectations of communication, trust, and collaborative, and meet and exceed expectations. You do those things, you're going to create that virtuous circle that I talked about in which you're going to continuously have opportunities. You build your reputation and you start to build then your portfolio of working with industry.